Right.
Shabbat Shalom. Behold how good and how pleasant it is that we are together as one family. Even if we are still Zooming our services, we are one community.
Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 We continue now with Lechu Neranena on page 130. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena l'Adonai. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena l'Adonai. Naria, Naria, Letzuri Shenu, Nekadmat Fana Vetoda. Naria, Naria, Letzuri Shenu, Bismirat Naria Lo. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena l'Adonai. 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 And we welcome the Sabbath bride. We welcome Shabbat with Lecha Dodi on pages 138 and 139. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Ishmianu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor haveracha. Merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh v'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi וצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We continue now with the lighting of the Shabbat candles.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
We continue now with Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בקלה בקלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם מעלמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן.
We continue now with our call to worship, the Baruch Hu. We invite you, if you are able, to please rise physically or in spirit.
Lai, lai, lai.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhmah poteach she'arim, uvitfunam meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim, v'meshmerotehem barakir kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Imloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch Ata Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Amcha Ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu uv'kumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla negei yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch Ata Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form? Baruch Ata Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. I invite us to take a deep breath in, exhaling out.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod בכור מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. You may be seated. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God.
In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Mí chamocha ba'elim Adonai,
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We continue now the central portion of our worship with our tefillah, beginning on page 164 and following.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot, ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ava, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, and our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha be'ir'ah na'avod. Modim anachnu lach, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulached na'eh lehodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
We now take this opportunity to take a deep breath in, exhaling out as we pause in silent reflection. We now focus our energies toward those who are ill and in need of healing. On this Shabbat, we think of Sally Amarendez, Chana Bat Miriam, Eliana Bat Chana, Ivan Aronson, Robert Berg, Mort Berlant, Dr. Arnold Berliner, Sarah Beinstock, Sandy Beinstock, Rich Burns, Esther Burton, Bob Kant, Nicole Chapman, Lori Vensky, Carolyn Franklin, Barbara Fiedman, Jason Fishoff, Holly Fugit, Betty Garcia, Mary Gold, Ted Guglin, Rosie Gurman, Courtney Hansen, Linda Harris, Dr. Gary Height, Barbara Jackowitz, Mimi Jones, Kevin Krieger, Evelyn Katz-McCosker, Leah Tzvia Batlib of Elchanan, Janice Lucero, Young Song Lot, Carol Lerner, Shirley Lerner, Litia Leos, Bobby Lotman, Austin Lucero, Eva Misley, Brad Parkins, Carol Ross, Linda Rogers, Ben Rubin, Marilyn Rudy, Dolores Sams Hoy, Gary Sanders, Laura Sanders, Donna Shine, Sybil Summer, Roberta Stivelman, Donna Thyman, Van Tai Trang, Gina Thrower, Teresa Walsh, Claire Cecil Watson, Rosanna Wershing, Jeannie Watson, Nancy Weisenfeld, Sue Witten, Sherman Wong, and everyone who is suffering from coronavirus. We now continue with a word of Torah. What makes us feel holy? What makes us feel special? Traditionally for our people, what we ate was part of what made us holy. And in this week's Torah portion, Shmini, from the book of Leviticus, we see a lengthy list of culinary do's and don'ts, which is the textual foundation of kashrut, which is Jewish dietary practice and laws. The laws of kashrut were greatly expanded by the rabbis of the Talmud to include food preparation in general, and included the full separation of milk and meat products, methods of slaughter, and a whole range of food regulations during Pesach, Passover. Keeping kosher became more complex in modern times, especially when we consider such factors as changes in food production, the making of new foods from tofu to genetically modified products, the health food movement, new understandings of spirituality, for example. Rabbi Lance Sussman, a wonderful historian, has done a great job of studying the history of kashrut in America. He explains that until the post-World War II era, the kosher food industry was widely afflicted by an endless array of problems involving fraud, price fixing, and even infiltration by organized crime. As early as 1771, there was a complaint against Shochet Moshe in colonial New York, and in 1796, a New York kosher butcher had his business license revoked. The well-known American Jewish leader Mordechai Manuel Noah unsuccessfully tried in 1844 to develop a chemical test to detect lard in Jewish food products. And in 1888, Orthodox Jews in New York hired Jacob Joseph to be their chief rabbi and bring order to the city's kosher food industry. Although personally popular, Rabbi Joseph was unable to tame the Big Apple's unruly kosher food industry. Before World War I, a number of American Jewish communities even witnessed kosher food boycotts and riots protesting price fixing and other questionable practices. Progressivism and its quest for order ultimately solved the problem. In 1911, Procter & Gamble, a large company, sought and received kosher certification for Crisco. My mother used Crisco. Did yours? Other corporations quickly followed suit. In 1915, New York State passed its first kosher fraud law. The New York law, as well as others' law enacted in New Jersey and Maryland, initially failed to meet the constitutional requirements of separating church and state. But subsequent rewrites, in some cases, helped impose the police power of the state on the supervision of kosher food in America. In other cases, the precedent of Sunday blues laws allowed the courts to uphold the legality of state standards in kosher food cases. In Postville, Iowa, complex issues of fraud and labor practices led to a series of trials involving a Hasidic meat slaughtering operation which had been first established there in 1987. Ultimately, however, it was self-regulation that righted the course of America's problematic kosher food industry. In 1918, Abraham Goldstein, a New York City chemist, began importing kosher food products. Goldstein was hired in 1924 by the Orthodox Union to head up its newly founded kosher certification program under the OU brand. One of his successors, Rabbi Alexander S. Rosenberg, greatly expanded the OU operation from 1950 to 1972, laying the foundation for the huge expansion of kosher food certification in the last quarter of the 20th century. Therefore, demographic growth in the Orthodox community and the rise of foodieism, among other factors, helped propel phenomenal growth of kosher food in America and elsewhere. Now, how did Reform Judaism fit into the picture of modern kosher food history? Within the Reform movement, early radicals such as Rabbi David Einhorn taught that kashrut was largely part of the ancient Levitical religious system and was no longer binding on Reform Jews. I'm not so sure that he would be viewed as so radical today for many of us. Other reformers reversed traditional wisdom about Jewish dietary practice, which was understood to have the social consequence of isolating Jews in their diaspora communities, and therefore contrary to the higher, even messianic purposes of the emerging Reform movement. On the other hand, Reform moderates who organized the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, which is the predecessor for the Union of Reform Judaism, in 1873 ruled that it was expected that all UAHC congregations would maintain traditional kashrut in their quest to build an inclusive Jewish religious movement, which is why we've always said at Temple we should be kosher style, kosher friendly. Within 10 years, however, a more radical reform prevailed, and at the ordination of the first class of rabbis at the Hebrew Union College in July of 1883, a non-kosher meal, later known as the Treifa banquet, was served. In fact, the Cincinnati dinner was typical of American Jewish banquet practice at the time. 2 years later, an anti-kashrut position, influenced by Einhorn, was adopted at the Pittsburgh meeting of a group of leading Reform rabbis in 1885, which became, of course, part of the Pittsburgh Platform. The wisdom of a policy allowing food acculturation was reinforced by a 1918 Reform responsum granting Jewish soldiers an exemption from keeping kosher during World War I. For approximately the next 60 years, Reform Jewish food policy was a settled matter, until the Great Revolution in the kosher food industry began in the last quarter of the 20th century. In 1979, a lengthy historical Reform responsa on Reform Judaism and kashrut helped set the stage for a new approach to the issue of food in the Reform movement. At the same time, Rabbi Simeon J. Maslin's book, The Gates of Mitzvah, appeared, urging religious experimentation with keeping kosher. Thereafter, Reform synagogues increasingly began defining their food policies in Levitical terms, prohibiting the consumption of pork and shellfish on the premise of the synagogue. The second Pittsburgh Platform, that I was part of in 1991, also recognized the new openness to tradition in late 20th century Reform by stating, quote, "We are committed to the ongoing study of the whole array of mitzvot and to the fulfillment of those that address us as individuals and as a community. Some of these mitzvot, sacred obligations, have long been observed by Reform Jews. Others, both ancient and modern, demand renewed attention as the result of the unique context of our own times, unquote. Most recently, the early years of the 21st century have witnessed a general broadening of the debate over kashrut, both within and beyond the Reform movement. Either way, the intention is for us as Jews is to think about what we eat. For many of us, health is key to our eating habits. For others, the treatment of animals is vital. For most of my life, I have wrestled with kashrut. I recall telling my mother at the age of 12, "Mom, I don't want to have bacon or shrimp in the house," which I thought was chutzpah. She looked at me and said, "Okay." And so I have been kosher my life, vegetarian, vegan, microbiotic, gluten-free, sugar-free, you name it. I've struggled with the amount of meat our society consumes and with the amount of GMO we have in our food products. I do think we overeat meat in our society. But in the end, kashrut is not about holiness for me. Holiness is about how we act in the world. What we put in our mouths is more of a reflection of our values and what is important to each of us as individuals. So, I invite you to join me in this struggle as we consider a modern approach to kashrut that encapsulates our values and what we believe to be most important. Amen. We continue with Olenu. Please rise if you're able, either physically or in spirit.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula liotzer breshit, shehu note shamayim v'yoser haaretz, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We now come to the moment in our service when we think about those members of our family and community who've died recently or in years past. On this Shabbat, we especially think of those that are grieving the Shloshim, the first month of mourning for Roy Robert Creech. We also think of those that are grieving the Shana for Gary Acknan, Tony Berliner, Idel Kagan, Dory Cohen, Bill Davenport, Rebecca Lynn Decker, Benny Schumann Donald, Vladimir Doktorovich, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Bernice Green, former president of our congregation Bob Hirsch, Rita Kane, Selma Karcham, Janet Katz, Father Bill Leninger, Marian Suni Levin, Michal Lubin, Manny Migdal, David Reiser, Cami Resnick, Edith Robinson, Steve Rosenthal, Lois Rosette, Boris Supak, Francis Singer, B. Chandler Shaw, Greg Stiller, Joel Strauss, Gunther Vogler, Carol Wachtenheim, Henry Wild Sr. We also think of the following yahrzeits that we observe on this Shabbat, as we think of Morris Actor, Vladimir Avrabuch, Geraldine Citron Berman, Isidore Breslauer, Henya Berman, Joseph Burns, Sylvia Zins, Molly Drezinski, Jules Edelman, Meyer Eisenberg, Esther Everett Albring, Bill Fox, Margaret Gaggle, Benjamin Gold, Mike Goldberg, Paul Hausner, Nancy Hirsch, Ralph Jacobson, Jerry Kane, Linda Blauner Klein, Emmy Lou Levin, Sylvia Levine, Marcia Lilly, Mike Lupin, Susie McRoberts, Eric Mendel, George Miller, Faye Myers, Benjamin Nadell, Norman Newman, Beatrice W. Newman, David Parnes, Adolph Peters, Ida Peters, Sidney Pollock, Herman Rosen, Marjorie Scherer, Hyman Shopko, Marjorie Solomon, Kristen Summer, Gertrude Stivelman, David Wallach, Philip Wiener. Zichronam Livracha, may all their memories endure as a blessing. As we now think of those names mentioned, and those names who are dear to us and who we so miss right now, as we join together in the ancient words of our Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, ve'amad divrach chirutei, ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, v'chayei dechol be'Yisrael, ba'agalav uzman karev v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'taleh v'talal shmei dekudesha b'reichu. Le'olam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'elma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo Rabbah meshamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Shabbat Hamalka, Hachamame Rosh Ha'ilano Nistalka, Bo'u v'netze likrat Shabbat Hamalka. Bo'i kala, bo'i kala, bo'i kala. Rosh Ha'ilano Nistalka, Bo'u v'netze אילנו נסתלקה, בואו ונצא לקראת שבת המלכה. הנה היא יורדת הקדושה, הברוכה, ועמה מלאכים, צבא שלום שבת המלכה, החממי ראש האילנות נסתלקה, בואו ונצא לקראת שבת המלכה. הנה היא יורדת הקדושה, הברוכה, ועמה מלאכים, צבא שלום נסתלקה, בואו ונצא לקראת שבת המלכה. החממי ראש האילנות נסתלקה, בואו ונצא לקראת שבת המלכה. החממי ראש האילנות נסתלקה, בואו ונצא לקראת שבת המלכה.
And now it's time for our announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Kim Jackman, and on behalf of Temple Emanu-El's Board of Trustees, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our streaming Erev Shabbat service. Mazel tov to the Zwick family as their daughter Nora Lee becomes a bat mitzvah tomorrow morning at 10:30. Please register if you'd like to join the Simcha over Zoom. On Sunday at 10 a.m., there will be a follow-up discussion to the Jews of Lithuania series to see if anyone is related and learn more about each other's family ancestry. On Tuesday, April 13th, Combatants for Peace and the Parents Circle Families Forum will be broadcasting their annual joint Israeli-Palestinian Memorial Day ceremony at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Time. Also on Tuesday, join the rabbi for his weekly chat at noon. On Wednesday, Rabbi will be holding his bi-monthly Lunch and Learn at noon. The learning will focus on Israel, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, and the latest elections. And Thursday, which is Yom HaAtzmaut, join the Federation's worldwide celebration of Israel's 73rd Independence Day, which will be streamed at 4 p.m. Pacific. Earlier, you can catch a restream of some of Temple Emanu-El's past Yom HaAtzmaut videos. Next Friday, April 16th, our Tot Shabbat will be streamed at 6 p.m. and our Erev Shabbat service will be streamed at 7 p.m. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.